everyone, welcome to another episode of Play, Watch, Listen. We are trying to do these more regularly since everyone is in quarantine to bring some light into the world, to give people some entertainment while they're stuck at home. Disclosure before we get into this episode, that does mean that Mike Bithell does not have a microphone, so he might sound a little bit off. But for the most part, we're trying to do these every Friday now if we can. So welcome. We're going to do our best. I'm also naturally joined by Austin Wintry and Troy Baker.
Yay.
And Mike just left.
Mike?
And now we, our Mikeless Mike has left us Mikeless.
Do you need that much of an intro? Like you have to make an entrance, Mike? Is that what
it's like a late night TV show. Hey.
I do also want to mention that tomorrow morning there is a PS5 reveal stream. We are recording this before then because I think Mike is flying back to the UK potentially. So we've missed that one. Get out of
our country, Mike. You foreigner.
Get out.
We can just jump straight into
that. Should we do a bunch of canned like insert responses of like, oh my God, I can't believe Sony did that.
I love Mark Sony. That's all I'm going to say. I love him. I love him to bits.
He's
Every time I've ever met or interviewed that man is just the greatest ever. He's so smart and so extremely I want to say even compassionate when he speaks about video games. I asked him for someone's name once and he didn't remember and it bothered him for the next 10 minutes in a way that I was like, it's fine, you can just email me.
Sweet.
Very sweet guy.
What I love is you'll be at like an industry event and everyone else will be like walking around like they own the place, and you'll see Mark and he'll just be like just chilling. And it's like, of all the people here, you should be the most arrogant person in the room. And yet, yeah.
We were at DICE Awards and in Vegas, and we're all dolled up. It's afterwards, the party that we go to, and everyone's having a drink in their hands, and they've had a few drinks in their hands, including my wife. And we're sitting there, and Mark Cerny, like you said, just kind of just chilling and walking across the room. And I was like, "Oh, hey, Mark," he had given an award. I can't remember to whom that night. And Pam was just feeling particularly affable at that moment. She's like, "Hi." And she just reached out and she's like, "I love your jacket." And she was just like touching his jacket and she gave him a big hug. And she's like, "Who was that?" I was like, "Well, that was the main architect of the PS4 and I'm sure the PS5. This was several years ago. So we had just heard about the PS4 at that point, but not necessarily the most affectionate person. So it was really, he took it all in stride. He was like, "There's a stranger hugging me."
Yeah. I can imagine that making him extremely uncomfortable, but that he would also be extremely polite about it. Wonderful dude. Shout out to Mark Cerny.
Yay,
although in Pam's defense, like,
yes,
you could be doted on by a worse person.
True story.
I think it's
true story.
Very, very hard to imagine being put off by Pam.
Everybody wins. So yes, we have no idea what's actually happening with that announcement, but I did also want to quickly mention I have been playing Doom Eternal, and it is very good. Review embargo for that was today. It is fantastic. I can't stand the platforming, but outside of that, very good game. Have not yet played Animal Crossing, but I think those are our main beats for this week in the games industry.
How did you feel about the previous Doom by comparison?
I love every single Doom except 3. Doom 1 is one of my favorite games ever. I absolutely adore that game. Yeah, why? I love it to bits. I love the puzzle aspects of it. It's also one of the first games I remember playing, so I have a lot of nostalgia for it. But exploring those worlds, every single level being vastly different. Like there's one level where your challenge is that you can't find enough ammo and you have to figure out how to do things with your hands. And then the next one you have tons of ammo, but the rooms teleport you to different locations. I feel like it's just so consistently surprising that I love the level design. That's what I'm a sucker for. If there's games that I love, it's always level design. I'm so passionate about Dishonored and Dishonored 2 because the level design, especially in Dishonored 2, is just so good. But anyway, yes, loved 2016. I think Doom Eternal is better except for the platforming. But I don't know that everyone's going to feel that way. Some people might be fine with it. I just don't like how it breaks up the pacing for the most part.
It feels very out of, I don't want to say out of canon, but it just feels weird for there to be platforming in a Doom game. That feels strange to me.
Yeah,
like
can even jump originally.
Not like going to different levels and stuff, because that's obviously been a thing, but true platforming just feels weird.
Well, there's always some element of run and jump and hit the narrow little spot, especially for secrets, right? Like that was always pretty but that's I never thought of that as platforming, not in the same way of traditional.
Were you a Wolfenstein person as well, or
I
did
love
Doom
Wolfenstein.
catch you?
So good.
Yep.
Yeah,
But-
me too. That's
Big fan of all of the
You know
above.
what's funny?
That's a top of the list for me.
My favorite Wolfenstein was the one before the reboot.
Oh, really?
Before the reboot.
The like Return
What's
to
that
Castle
called?
Wolfenstein.
Yeah, I think it was
That's the
Castle.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it came. It was
360?
Well, yeah, 360 or PS3.
I think both, but it was that era.
Yeah,
I
but I mean,
believe.
I'm trying to remember which one I played it on. It
Oh,
probably
right.
was PS3 at that point. It just the narrative was super cool about it. It was super eerie because you're moving around inside. It wasn't Wolfenstein, just like Doom, was always kind of like you're in a corridor, you're in a room, super claustrophobic, and this brought you outside to me, which was super cool. But then a buddy of mine worked on the reboot. He played BJ Blazkowicz.
I love him.
And I think actually helped write, and they got people that were actual Auschwitz survivors to be part of the cast. It was a really cool.
No way. I didn't know that. That's super
yeah.
cool.
I was just curious because it's like a Pepsi Coke thing between Wolfenstein and Doom. A lot of times people are like, no. I think Wolfenstein was better. It's like they're kind of the same game.
I
except
actually
without
love
the
them for
teleportation.
vastly different reasons.
Yeah, me too. Totally, me too.
And do love both. But that said, I didn't play the original Wolfenstein. I only played Doom back in the day. I've played it since, but only played Doom initially. And I don't know. I think the cool thing about Doom is I don't even know when they were making it if they realized what they were making and how much it would influence everything ever after that. That it's just one of the most important games ever made, probably. And the fact that exists and it still holds up today, and I still frequently play in Doom 1, maybe every month, is a huge testament to what they created. It's so good.
I think my favorite
I love
was
that it's
when
a failed license game as well, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Doom was meant to be an Alien tie-in, and then they pulled the license.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
How have I
makes
never
sense.
heard that before?
Especially
Yeah,
you.
it was meant to be. It actually explains a lot of like the design choices. If you think, oh, that was meant to be a Xenomorph, and then like last minute they had to change it.
It sounds
That's-
cute.
I don't know how last
Yeah.
minute. I don't know the exact chronology, but I know it started life as an Alien game, and I kind of, to me, that's the nicest thing about it. Is it's what you said, Alanah. It's kind of some of the best games happen when game designers and game developers are like solving a problem, like having no license anymore. It's good stuff. Often happens.
You know
when you're
what?
in a weird corner.
I may have known that because we played it on our show, and I think I remember running through a little titty bit of
A
it
titty
being
bit? A little bit of a titty?
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that just stuck. We call it titty bit. We just lost our intern, man. Tom, the intern,
no.
dude, got Emerson College. I don't know if I told you guys this or not. It's somewhat of a tangent. Totally a tangent.
At this
Somewhat
point,
of-
people are used to tangents. on
Par,
the show.
yeah, I was gonna say par for the course. Actually, that makes me think of a story.
So Tom, the intern, got here from Emerson College, and he emailed Drew Lewis, one of our producers, one of our like the four of us that run this thing. And he was like, "Hey, I'm moving to Los Angeles. Can I come be an intern for you guys?" And he goes, "Yeah." So within he saw us at PAX East, and was a fan of the show, and then came out and is a huge Funhouse fan as well. And then within 2 weeks, he was being our little bitch, and he was the most. I speak of him as if he's gone. He was dead, but he just flew out Sunday. But he was just the most down for whatever guy. And I got a text from him. He's like, "Hey, dude, I'm shipping back to Boston." And I was like, "Well, hopefully, we get you back. This is just a little hiatus for you." But yeah, we lost Tommy the intern. But the reason why I bring that up is because we started calling all the little factoids about games that we were playing, the little Tommy's titty bits, which is just I love alliteration.
That's very cute.
That was a worthwhile tangent, I think.
Yeah,
I
man.
give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Shout out to Tommy. Tom the intern. Alanah, I have a question for you, and I'd
Yes,
love for
sir.
everybody else to answer this if I may. Speaking of seminal games that you even made the comment that most, even Ken Levine said that most games are just reskins of Half-Life 2. What other games, if you like Doom, Wolfenstein, what other games like that? Could you do a top 5 of these were the games that launched 1,000 titles? What were for you? What were those games that were this is the
Okay.
be all and all?
Ocarina of Time, obviously. There are still games that just I mean, I went to the GDC talk for Platinum where Yoko Taro was talking about the fact that the Nier Automata map is the exact same size as Ocarina of Time, because they were like, what size should we make that? Like, what's a good map size? And they were like, Ocarina of Time. So they just made it the same size. And I feel like I mean, Mario's the same, but especially for Ocarina of Time, it's just Zelda in general, really. So many Japanese games and Japanese devs are so inspired by Zelda. And I really like thinking about the fact that we don't even necessarily have the game that is inspiring the next generation of game devs. Like, we know Ocarina of Time, but the games industry is still so new that maybe in 30 years there's this completely new thing that inspires everyone else. I think Gears of War is actually a pretty important one for the cover system. That really blew that up, and obviously that's a lot more modern, but so many games have taken the L. Like, I mean, if Rockstar wants to take something from you, then you've probably done a pretty good job. One that I really appreciate, which we saw more of, is the Batman Arkham combat system. And that's one that I'm like, you can put that in every game forever and I will immediately want to play it.
Okay.
And Mario, naturally, huge deal. Don't know if you've heard of him. Plumber, Italian. Very popular guy.
Plums, right, Mike? Lunar Distance. To bring that back. Hey, we have callbacks to our own show now.
Aw, look how cute. We're doing it.
What about you? I'm curious. What would you say to that question? Mikey Bethel?
Yeah, who are you talking to?
Me? I'm just going to always assume that Troy's addressing me from now on.
Yes, please.
I'm fine with that also.
I'm trying to think. I think I'd throw in a vote for System Shock, just in terms of the impact that had. I think you need System Shock and that kind of focus specifically on systemic emergent gameplay to get you to a lot of modern game design, a lot of modern, like, you don't get to obviously all the immersive sims, but also kind of, I feel like System Shock and the games that it inspired, so like your Deus Ex, your Thief, all of that kind of basically Looking Glass stuff.
Yeah. That
gets you to open world games, I think that gets you to a lot of Western RPG design tropes. I think that's one of those ones that maybe is less well known, but like you can trace back a lot of stuff to the extent that you go and play System Shock now, and it almost feels cliche, because you've seen everything in it kind of ripped off so many times. So I guess I go for that, or maybe Metal Gear is one that for me is just a massive. Metal Gear Solid just was so groundbreaking in terms of, like, obviously a lot of gameplay ideas that were kind of fresh. Stealth really kind of blew up. It was, I believe I'm right in saying Thief and Metal Gear Solid came out the same year, 98 or something. Like, and having those two games kind of trigger off the stealth genre, but then also obviously the big thing with Metal Gear is I think a lot of what we take for granted now in terms of, like, quote unquote cinematic storytelling in games, like aspiring to telling movie stories and stories of that kind of scale, you can trace back to Metal Gear. I think that we all owe a lot to that as well. So those would be my two: System Shock and Metal Gear.
Austin?
Yeah, you actually, it's funny, the first game that came to mind. It's funny how this is always, for all of us, it's through the lens of what we play, as opposed to like a scholarly sort of academic analysis of the industry at large. I mean, Alanah is probably the closest to having that wide of a view, just having written about
because
some
she has
games
white
and
hair.
Played. And yes, exactly. Just automatically gives credentials as halfway to a PhD just by virtue of the hair color.
Thank you.
No, because I was going to say Deus Ex, but I think actually going one earlier to System Shock is probably kind of no. Yeah, you were into it before anybody.
I actually haven't played System Shock. I played 2, but I haven't played the first one. Can you still play it now, or would it?
I know that.
No.
I don't know. It's been a while. I played System Shock 2 recently. Like, I know they're doing a reboot, right? They're coming. They did a Kickstarter, so they're bringing it back. Yeah.
Interesting. What
System
was the first
Shock 2
MMO?
was definitely one of those seminals for me.
What was the first MMO? I guess like you could go back to MUDs, arguably. In terms of, I don't know about
man,
I don't know.
Like, I don't know who invented the term.
The multi-user dungeons go back like to the 80s.
Yeah.
I always think of Ultima as the one that kind of like EverQuest was because of Ultima, and World of Warcraft was in large part because of EverQuest. In my mind, as someone like that's what seemed to be the the sequence as someone who was deep in it, because I was a crazy intense EverQuest player, and then reached that threshold where I was like, I have no bandwidth for the rest of my life, so I just cold turkey just bailed, and then it was like a month later that WoW launched, and I was like, you know what, I can't even dip my toes because I'll be in scuba gear 30 feet under.
I am
10
very
seconds.
addicted to MMOs. Guild Wars 2 and Neverwinter are my two go-tos. Oh, it's not a good time because I also don't even play them socially. I just play them completely fine with being by myself. So it's just grinding by myself. I did a lot of that in uni, and it was not a good call. Like I have to stop playing them. So the internet tells me the first one is believed to have been Meridian, and then Ultima. So you guys were spot on.
Okay. The other answer I had to that, by the way,
Facadia?
what?
Facadia? I haven't heard of it. The longest running one has been running for 19 years. Facadia, I believe it's called. It says with Dragon's Eye Productions. Haven't heard of it. Good job.
Yeah, interesting. Niche upon niche. But
Yeah.
the other thing I was going to chime in with was because my big favorite genre when it's like, especially growing up, it has in so many ways largely died out, which was the point and click adventure. But the heyday of like LucasArts and Sierra, you go back to the old LucasArts like Monkey Island 1, Loom, Maniac Mansion, the mid to late 80s LucasArts games, and then like King's Quest 1, and the other Roberta Williams, like all those kind of mid 80s and late 80s, early 90s, to me were like such the blueprint of everything that I cared about so much later, sort of the grand culmination of which was Grim Fandango. But then you have like, obviously the Monkey Island games and Full Throttle, The Dig, which to me was like one of the most awesome games ever made, as was Full Throttle, to be honest. But
Full Throttle is a classic.
It's just so good. But then it's like, that's not really an active part of our gaming conversation anymore, the whole point and click thing. I mean, obviously, Double Fine kind of gave it a little bit of lifeblood, and there's always indies that kind of have bits of that influence, but it's not really a major part of the industry anymore. So it's like my answer to that is sort of a thing that had a predecessor, but then also kind of died.
Well,
so
I mean,
it's like a genetic lineage
for the mobile industry. They're still really popular on mobile. Make a lot of money over there. My mom plays a ton of point and click mobile games.
Like what? What would be the go-to? What would be an example? I've never even explored a point and click mobile.
The
game.
Leading one is, I believe, is called The Room, or The Room game. That's the one that is. They made a VR version. That's cool.
Yeah,
it's like an escape room kind of thing. It's really good.
Yeah,
but that's a puzzle. I guess the distinction I would draw is that I'm talking about the narrative.
Walking across the screen with 5 verbs, right? That's what you mean, Austin.
Well, that's of course the old. The original ones that I liked were the parser interface where you had to type everything. Oh, no, the parser interface was the mouse click. The before that is where you literally type like look around, and it's it's all in just massively rudimentary like 16 color graphics where you're like, I think that's a tree, and I think that one like dark pixel at the bottom is a hole. So you type look in hole at bottom of tree, and it's like you found a key, and it's like, who the fuck ever thought to try that? Like, it's just, but it was intuitive back in those days. We
need to go back to parser games. That'd be fun to do now, because I bet you could make a better one now with text parsing.
What was the game that they played in Big? Remember, it was like it's like Freeze, Wizard, or Use. God, hold on, what was it called? No, Zool was text-based adventure. Not Zool.
Any of you guys played Mystery of Time and Space?
No. Cavern of the Evil Wizard is the name of that game.
It's online. The internet tells me it's considered a graphic adventure game, but it's basically like a point-and-click puzzle game that was browser-based when I played it, I believe, that I just got obsessed with in high school, that I found extremely hard. But it's like you just start in this room, you don't know why you're there, and you have to figure out how to get out of the room, but it doesn't tell you anything. Like, I feel like it was really good, but I don't I never trust my teenage judgment on things. I thought Donnie
Sometimes
Darko
it's
was
best
good.
not to go
Who
back,
knows?
right?
Yeah.
Text-based adventures, man. Those were the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a great. They brought it back for an anniversary thing, and BBC did for that was a browser version as well. Text-based adventures were just, to me, those were the blueprint for so many games. It was like,
Oh yeah.
the game that you can invent in your mind, and especially when you're tying it into a franchise that if you had read the books or if you had seen the movies or even better, the movies were weird, but the BBC production that they did was awesome.
Did you play Starship Titanic, Troy?
No, what is that, bro?
Oh, you need to play that. That's Douglas Adams' from the ground up text adventure. Kind of text adventure, graphic adventure hybrid.
Starship Titanic.
Called Starship Titanic. The Python's voice act in it. It's like if you're into your Douglas Adams, that's a good place for you to check out. It's completely forgotten at the time, but the big gimmick of it was that you would basically be able to talk to NPCs by typing. So it was basically doing text parsing for conversation. And it was the mid-90s, so it's not perfect, but like it's better than you'd expect. Anyway, that's my tip to you. That's it. You'll like that. If you like Hitchhiker's Guide, you'll like that one.
I love Hitchhiker's Guide, and I got into it way too young. Like my parents read it, and so I started reading it. I was like 9, 10 when I started reading that. A Restaurant at the End of the Universe, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. I mean, all of that. And what's great is on my 42nd birthday, which if you've read the books, you'll understand the significance of that.
Very nice.
Got me a first edition of
10 years from now, you're talking about, right? 42nd birthday, 10 years from now, or?
Bro, I'll be 44 in 2 weeks.
Oh, cool.
What I love is that would make you still older than Alanah. If that
significantly,
that was the case.
Yeah.
26.
26?
Are you really only 26 along?
Yeah.
Good girl.
Wow.
Yep.
That's why she's looking at
Whole
all the
life ahead of me.
coronavirus sort of demographic breakdowns and going.
I'm great.
Oh yeah, we're definitely
dude.
first
I got
on the
asthma
topic.
and then I'm immunocompromised. I'm terrified. Well, it's just 26 ain't helping here, but hey, trying to keep it lighthearted. So I did
You got one in the pro column then.
Yes, the age is working for me, and I've been to work out during quarantine. I've been playing a bunch of VR games. I've never tried using VR for fitness before. Like naturally, I've gotten sweaty reviewing VR games before, but it's working incredibly well. Naturally, I'm loving Beat Saber because Beat Saber's the best. But
Job
super hot.
Stouffer. Do you know Job Stouffer? He was the community manager for Telltale. He's a huge proponent for that. And Job lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Job was a big dude. We saw each other at DICE. I love Job, and he was a huge proponent of
Well, he runs a company now, right? That's specifically focused on VR, like health and all that stuff. I lost like 3 stone on Wii Fit back in the day.
Yeah.
I put it all back on, obviously, but like it was good for a while.
The fad died out. You got bored of tennis and you gave up. It happens.
That's right. I was like,
but yeah, the thing that like really. At first, I was like, I got to stop going to the gym. That's such a big risk. So I stopped, and I've just started playing VR games. And it is really such a great way to work out because the best thing is you forget. Slightly terrifying is you forget how long you spend when you're in VR. You forget how long you're actually under that. I remember the first VR game I reviewed, or one of the first, was a game called Chronos, which is from Gunfire Games, which I really love. Yeah. It's one of my favorites. It's very Zelda, Dark Souls-esque, which is the most media person thing to say, but it is. Except with a fixed camera. And they do this really cool thing in that game where you stare at your character, third person, they walk around, and you basically kind of control the camera left to right. And there are these certain enemies that only move when you are not looking at them. So you can still move your character around, but you cannot, like, if you look at these enemies, they're perfectly still. Very, what's the Doctor Who? The Angels?
Weeping Angels.
Yeah, but the minute that you look your head away, and you can still control your character even if they're off screen and you can't see them to try to move them into your screen, those things start moving and you can hear them. And I thought that was such a cool VR mechanic because I'm controlling what I'm looking at. Terrifying, but I really, really loved it. So shout out to Chronos, Gunfire Games who make Darksiders.
That's emergent too, right? Because that's 100% based upon where the position of my head is, right? So like you said, that's driven entirely by my mechanics. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool. It's a super smart idea.
It's funny that you say that about my experience with most VR has always been the same as you said, but the flip, where I'll be playing it and I'll be like, wow, what a quick hour that was. And then it's been 3 minutes. And I'm just like, I'm like sweating and exhausted and I'm like stimulus overloaded. And it's been literal seconds.
I find them to be like casinos. Like with Chronos, the issue was I was reviewing it and I had no concept of time. And because you have no natural light, I thought it had been a couple of hours and it was like 6. And I was like, oh, I don't know how that happened. Yeah, I missed a meeting because I just like had no concept of what was happening to me. You take it off and it's dark outside. It's like when you leave the cinema and you're just like, oh God, like just completely get lost in those worlds, which is a huge credit to them. Like
6 hours feels too long. I don't think I could be in VR for 6 hours. I say that. I'm trying to think
when you have to review stuff, like you got to get through it as fast as you can, really.
I hear you, which I oppreciate that as opposed to like, I played a few minutes of it. This is what I think of the entire game. And it's
That's
not a reviewer. That's what's called an awards jury.
Speaking of, so the BAFTAs.
Okay.
Hey, we're not disparaging. BAFTA's getting pushed and everyone's going to the little online model. How do we feel about that? Is that something we want to get into?
Yeah, I mean, IGA is doing their awards online, which is always one of my favorites. GDC awards, they're just general awards, are also online. I'm glad they're still doing them. I don't think that for those particularly, GDC is such an exclusive event anyway, or was, I guess, that most people can't afford to or couldn't afford to get to San Francisco anyway. Obviously, GDC's past tense now. That I think they should.
Well, it would be happening right this second.
It would be.
We're in the midst of.
I think the awards ceremony's Wednesday night, but we will already be published by the time that has aired.
Right.
But I mean, it's such an exclusive event anyway that pushing it to be. It already is pretty accessible, but even more online, I don't see any downside to that, really. It's more people get to see it. Do the BAFTAs have a backup plan, or are they just delaying?
No, they're doing online, right?
Yeah, they're not actually pushing. They think they're just shifting it to online.
That was a pretty exclusive event too, right? I mean, I know there's some people
BAFTAs,
that you could open it up to the public or get a ticket through a lottery, whatever. But the Oscars used to be like a private dinner. Like it was not obviously televised or anything else. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, just go get your award. It was a super downplayed thing. So I mean, I kind of like it. The main purpose, we've talked about this before, our first one up, I think, the reason why I love award show is because it affords certain developers the opportunity to make more games, because there's a qualitative thing that they can now bring to the publisher and say, see, we did it good. You give us more money, give us another game. So I think it's important that they not push or cancel, because those awards need to be given out so that studios, some of those bonus structures can be hit and people can get back to work. Because that's what scares me right now is, Mike, you know this better than anybody. It's like if they're not making something, or if there's some people that are going to be happy that they get to slip a little bit because they get more time to polish. But at some point, then they exceed their burn rate and they're going to run out of money. Yeah. And even if they're not like big AAA, if they're an indie game or whatever, they're like, we're out of money and we have to be able to ship this game so that we can recoup, right?
Oh, I'm acutely aware, of this situation. It's tough. It's tough out there. Like in terms of like us, we have 2 or 3 kind of things that are at different stages, and every single one of them has been impacted. Every single one of them. One of them has had kind of timing issues because of people's inability to travel. One of them's had like a knock-on from other stuff, and one of them, is tied to some other. I'm being very vague for obvious reasons, but it's every single project. That's obviously pales in comparison to the actual real world kind of events that are taking place. But it's
no, but I think it's worth getting into,
and it does affect people's income. We're lucky in that my team specifically, me and Alexander, who I run my studio with, are super, super paranoid at all times about money. Basically, because we're the classic example of like 2 kids who don't come from very wealthy backgrounds, so we're very tight with money, basically. Which has the benefit to our team of like I can go to my team and say, we're fine. There's money in the bank. We'll all keep working, even if even if things get in our way, everyone gets paid. It's all fine. That is a massive luxury and an enormous privilege.
But Bithell Games is already but the way you've set up you have no office. You're already a work from home studio by definition, aren't you? So you're the most inoculated.
We're the most theoretically. The problem is we work with a lot of people who aren't. That's the thing. Of course. And I think people from the outside, it's very easy to think the games industry is lots of individual islands. But the reality is we're all working with each other all the time. There's 20 companies behind any game you liked, and they're all impacted by everyone else. Even companies that the average gamer probably thinks are in competition are still relying on each other and still have kind of relationships and conversations.
Tencent owns PUBG
Microsoft
and
Microsoft and Sony love each other. They have relationships. Say again, sorry?
Tencent owns PUBG and Fortnite. I feel like that's just the biggest... this isn't what you think it is.
Coke and Pepsi.
Yeah.
And Dr. Pepper.
It's all interconnected, and that is causing some problems, because all it takes is, obviously bad situations to happen. That's the other thing, is we're also international, is that I'm directly affected by events in China. I'm directly affected by events in America. And that's, those kind of things kind of slide in as well. So yeah, it's a tough time out there. I think the games industry is going to be fine at a bigger level, but there is definitely please go and buy Doom. Buy lots of copies of Doom, please. That would be great for all of us.
Yeah, and it's a great game to play this week. It's very good.
It's a great game as well.
It's longer than I think any other Doom game. It's 20-ish hours. On Nightmare, it's much longer because, wow, it's tough. But I did actually want to use this episode to ask you guys, what does E3 being cancelled mean to you individually? Obviously, for me, it means a loss of a tremendous amount of money. That this is obviously outside of yes, we recognize that globally this is much greater than E3. I'm very, very intentionally getting specifically personal here, but it is, for media, the most profitable week of the year for every single one of those outlets. IGN made so much money during E3 every year. You get so much traffic during E3 every single year. I get the most followers on every single platform, which in theory for me can translate directly into money during E3 every single year. So just looking at the paperwork is a loss of tons and tons of money, but that's just the media side of it. That's really all media in theory lose, is a lot of sponsors pull out because the traffic's not there or not guaranteed in theory. You guys all have very different fields.
Do you think any media outlets I'm on the board of a charity, and we would always do a big fundraiser gala. We still do every year a big fundraiser gala. And for years and years and years, that gala was 70% of our annual income, because when we started out, we were small, and it was if we raised $100,000 that night, but we were a $300,000 charity, that's obviously a third. That's a substantial so if something required the cancellation of that, our burn rate was such that alone could cause us to close our doors, just like that. Do you think
this could lead to layoffs for some of the media companies? Yes, because the income during that week is that tremendous. I don't want to give anyone's numbers away.
I had no idea it was that much.
It is absurd. I don't want to give numbers away because I don't know if I'm allowed to, so I'm just not going to. But I do know IGN's traffic and income during that week, and it is just so important for them. Which, funnily enough, the site itself could run solely on GTA wikis.
Sure.
I know that for sure. GTA wikis do so well, but it's so much bigger than that.
Just so, because I'm unclear, maybe there's other people that are listening that are unclear as well. How can you speak to how that translates to money? Because maybe there's someone that doesn't understand. I don't fully understand how, hey, if I'm there, if I go to do a keynote, or if I'm there to do some press for a publisher, they're paying for that appearance, maybe, or it's part of my overall deal that I'm there to do part of the publicity and hit all the talking points. Or do a signing or whatever. But what does that mean for someone who is either a freelance or independent journalist, or someone who is on staff for a company like Polygon, IGN, Games Radar, Games UK, whoever that is there? How does that translate to money for that person, and more specifically money to that platform?
So if I think I'm answering your question correctly, for individual journalists, for freelancers especially, which is what I would have been doing just during this year's E3, just none of that work is there. So they've just cut it all. It's just naturally not happening. It's disappeared. Whereas usually everyone approaches it differently, but my first E3, I went for the BBC. I was specifically working for this program that was, it's on BBC One, and it was about telling old people what the games industry was, which was actually really fun. It was stuff like I would line up to play very specific games. I believe Unravel was there that year. So it was like, here's why this game's a big deal. Here's why people are lining up for 3 hours. This is what the games industry is. And it was really fun. So naturally, all of that stuff is gone. For the media houses specifically, it's that sponsors pull out because that's how they make all of their money during E3. And also just the traffic spikes around the news events are tremendous. So it's all ads really, but yeah, I don't know how else to answer that question. It's sponsors pulling out.
In
is
other
the main
words,
thing.
it's just like IGN's ad revenue will go up because they have 10 times more traffic that week than normal or whatever.
They're selling ad spots on every single live stream, and IGN basically live streams 24/7 that whole week. I think it's even 9 days. So they lose, the ad who was on, or the company whose ad was on the desk because someone pays for that. They have these like panels on the back of the stage that have ads on them. Those are gone. All of your mid-roll ads are gone because they're not streaming 24/7 anymore. So it's just tremendous deals. The biggest deals they have all year just gone.
And presumably they've made a big investment as well chasing those deals. So they've paid for the venue, they've paid for the staff that they've already paid for to do this, the equipment. So presumably they're spending a lot of money.
You start
to make
having
money
E3 meetings in November. That's when we start planning for E3. That's when we start planning who's going to be on our live show and what games they can talk to us about, because E3 is all you really care about every year. And then there's this little spike in November when COD comes out. And like a bunch of games come out in November and everyone calls it review season. And that's when everyone is dying because it's so much games to cover. But E3 is the moneymaker for media for sure. But I feel like,
has that been on the decline as general, like obviously certain major publishers have been minimizing or full on just bailing from E3, and like obviously Jeff Keighley saying like I'm out was a big story, and like has the media take the income stream and all that, has that followed suit? Like, is it one of those things that everybody's having to plan for the future and try to diversify that, or it's still basically like it's still well worth the investment because even with those sacrifices, it's still just so gigantic that it's obviously, for the short term at least, very viable.
PlayStation obviously wasn't at E3 last year, and I feel like a lot of the community response to that was like, E3's dead, it's not going to work. But every media website that I know of, including our own streams at Funhouse, did better than they did the last year. So E3 online is getting bigger and bigger every year. And I think like we can always forget that. You forget that like not everyone knows what E3 is. So every year there is this new wave of gamers who are learning what E3 is, who are getting into E3.
Yeah, but that definition of what E3 is very much in flux. That's a fluid definition because what E3 was, even 5 years ago, was an industry-only event. You must be, okay, now press. So press can, okay, you know what? Now we're going to start selling tickets, and now there's cosplayers at E3. So like we've watched this very quickly change from E3 being to, I'm going to sell my game to Walmart because they're there and they're the number one retailer for video games in the US, to, or GameStop, when all of a sudden that popped up.
As long as it's on Amazon, because they'll leak it. I think Walmart has two, actually.
Well, no, Walmart has had plenty of times that they leaked. It's like they're putting up the end caps,
I think they leaked Rage 2, I think. They were the ones who did that. They leaked Rage 2. I think it was Walmart. And everyone was like, that can't be right. Someone has to. Who's making Rage 2? What? But 2 weeks later, it was revealed.
Dennis, pull back the posters. Sorry. Put it up on the website. Oops. So I think that even E3, look, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation, and I think that there's people saying, "Oh, this was just them kind of cutting their losses and using this as a scapegoat." I
don't think that's true.
It doesn't matter to give credence to anything along those lines. It's purely speculative and has no bearing on the industry or whatever. But to me, that's an interesting thing, and why I wanted to point out to you, or to point out to anybody listening, is like, this is how everything is so connected. Like we are this industry, and not only just this industry, but all of us are a collective. We are a single organism that just has tentacles everywhere. I remember when the writer's strike happened, There were people that were honking their horns and supporting people that were writers, but at the same time, they were driving to restaurants that were closing their doors because those doors, like we've all been to the Smokehouse, which is right across from the Warner Brothers lot. That restaurant has survived because you haven't been there.
I'm like, have we? I've never heard of it.
Please.
We've all been at Warner Brothers. Is that the place you took me and Ben while we were recording on John Wick? Was that one?
No, that was Barrel and Ashes.
Called?
That was some great barbecue.
Oh,
Barrel and Ashes.
That's right. I knew there was smokiness involved
legit.
somehow. Yeah,
yeah dude.
Smokehouse is an institution.
I take a vegan to as many meat joints as I can.
You did a great job. There was one side on the menu I could eat. It was fine. It was absolutely fine.
I'll have more potatoes. Thank you very much. The Smokehouse and Austin points this out too, is that it was the namesake for George Clooney's production company because it's right across from the Warner Brothers lot. And that's where everybody from ER would go over to. And it's the kind of restaurant that literally, I think it was built in 1947 and they haven't changed anything, including the
like
menu.
the staff.
Yeah, the staff. The oldest guy is like Bela Lugosi is your server. And
Yes.
it's a place where you can either watch like a movie deal get done or somebody get whacked. It's like it's just the most old school place. But it's there were so many restaurants that closed, so many just mom and pop shops that closed because not only are they fighting the war of brick and mortar with online and Postmates and everything else, but when the writer's strike hit, that was a foundational part of their business because people weren't going to work because the industry closed down. And so what's so important, I think, like you said, and I have another question followed up with Mike, you said go buy many, many copies of Doom. Does that also work for back catalog? Like because there's so many people that go, oh, I've got my back catalog of games. But if you haven't bought it, go buy that now. Does that still benefit the publisher? I'm sure, but does it also still benefit the developer? And can that also help move this industry forward by going back and actually buying and playing through that back catalog? Or is it only new games?
It depends. Yeah, it's a tricky one, man, because the industry is, yes, it's all interconnected, but also obviously there's lots of unfair relationships built in to different parts of it, like within the industry, I imagine. If you go and buy like an old indie game right now that didn't come out for a publisher, that was, when you go to their Steam page, it's just, something like, say, Thomas Was Alone on PC. When you go and buy a copy of Thomas Was Alone on PC, the money you spend goes to my company. That's, I think, the only game we have where that's the situation directly, right? Because there's publishers. Publishers do a really important job. And often, like if you're buying a game, the publisher will get the money. And if a threshold has been crossed, an amount of money goes to the developer. If not, it doesn't. Which is again completely fair and reasonable. Publishers are usually the ones who put up lots and lots of money in the first place. So if they're in the situation I'm describing, that's because they're probably out of pocket anyway. The short answer is honestly yes. If you want to go and play a game, go and buy a game. That's going to help out the publisher. It's going to help out the developer. It's going to also crucially help out the publisher in more of a long-term way, which is publishers need money in their pockets to invest in new games. One of the things I was tweeting about that I don't think gamers are completely going to be conscious of is quite how much business happens at events like GDC and E3. I think we always think of E3 as a press event. You're seeing interviews with developers, you're seeing press conferences, you're seeing all of that. But crucially, it's when all of the, for lack of better language, powerful people in the games industry are all in 1-2 block radius, and a lot of business gets done. A lot of deals are done and handshakes happen. I was at E3 a couple of years ago doing the John Wick deal without actually being at E3, but it was more than a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. Because it was in LA and because everyone was in town. So we could literally just go and get everyone around the table who was a stakeholder in that thing happening was in town. So you can make business happen. Those things aren't happening.
Would you be willing to talk
an indie developer,
a little bit about what those deals look like? Like, so if we have to do them at GDC and E3, what is a deal to get a game made look like? What is that process?
So it can be really complicated or really simple. And a lot of people actually, when I tweeted about this, did reply saying, I can do a deal in 5 minutes on a Skype call. Great. Good for you. that is valid. That can happen. Like a deal, there are different kinds of deals. So there are deals.
Was that Rami Ismail, by the way? Is that who said that?
I think Rami was one of many who said that. And fair play, right? Like that does happen all the time. And yeah, so a deal can be really simple, where it's just literally.
Basically, this is now Shark Tank. Mike, pitch us your game. We're ready.
But there can be, basically, it can be like, I've got a game idea. Here's a cool prototype. I put a video of this prototype on Twitter. It got 5,000 likes. Please give me some money so I can finish it. Those kind of deals are very straightforward. And yeah, if a publisher wants to put the money in, then you'll negotiate a little bit. The lawyers will all look at it, come back, and that's fine. That can all happen remote. There's no reason that needs a physical placement. The places where it gets complicated is if there's anything more complicated than that. So, for example, if, say, you're being given the opportunity to direct in a franchise where the franchise is owned by lots of different people. So with John Wick is a good example. There's the film studio, Lionsgate. There's the production company, Thunder Road. There's all of the producers associated with that. There's the director of the movies. There's the stars of the movies. There's lots of people who have opinions and absolutely want to kind of feel you out and get to know you. Sometimes that can be done with Skype. First time I met Lance Reddick was over Skype, which was the most surreal thing I've ever done. But a lot of the time, yeah, you need to go and meet people in their own kind of space and kind of get to know them and stuff. But then the other thing on the other side of this is if you're an indie who's just starting out, you don't know anyone. It's all very easy saying, oh, I could Skype call someone from Xbox and get them to give me some money. Yeah, I can go call Shuhei. Actually, weirdly, Shuhei's probably the worst goal. Shuhei is probably the most accessible person. So you can actually read your DM and be on the phone with you immediately. But yeah, people like Shuhei, the people who can do deals, you don't know those people. The number of situations and opportunities you can get into at like a GDC or an E3 where you're just all around. And I've had it genuinely, and this isn't. I'm not trying to show off, but like literally, I've been in a situation where I've been talking to an indie. They've said, can I pitch you my game? I've said, I don't have any money to give you, but I'll have a look at your game. And then I'll play their game, love it, and be at the pub with Shuhei later in the day and be like, hey, you've got to check out this game. They're up in the 5th floor and blah, blah, blah. And then I'll hear like 2 days later, oh, Shuhei came by and liked it. We're doing it. Like those kind of scenarios, that's what you can't mirror necessarily online. A lot of people are trying to, and I hope it kind of works. And I think, there are ways of opening that up. There's also ways of democratizing it. Like it's a big part of this, of course, is, well, what about all the devs who can't get to these events? And that's a really, really valid criticism of everything I just said. But yeah, there will be deals that are not being done. There will be issues. It's also, and no one wants to say this, but it's also a year where theoretically there's going to be some hardware coming up. And there's a lot of factories are shut down.
It's nuts.
And those kind of things are going to be kicking in.
I'm expecting delays there, but we'll see.
We'll see. But likewise, the big AAA games, this is where crunch is a problem, right? Crunch is terrible on the best of occasions, but crunch during a crisis where you don't want people to be tired or have their immune systems shocked, that's a problem. And I definitely think we're going to see more game delays. We're seeing it start to kick in the film industry. The games, I get the impression maybe games companies are waiting for the first person to delay so they can all kind of do that.
Okay, us too.
That's it. I think no one wants to be the first to do it because they know they'll get the backlash. And then by game 2 or 3,
I have a friend at Disney who is okay with me saying this, but absolutely has to remain anonymous. He was saying the reason that they delayed the launch of Mulan for as long as they did was not Disney being selfish entirely. It was that if Disney acknowledged the seriousness of the situation, they then had to delay a series of films and close their parks and close a lot of studios. And they were actually worried about what that would do to the stock market, considering they control like 8.7% of the entertainment industry on stocks. So they were like, if we as Disney, who I think publicly trade as Buena Vista, acknowledge what this is doing, then we kind of destroy everyone, not just us. So they couldn't make a personal choice. They had to make it for the entire entertainment industry. So they were very, very hesitant to do that earlier than they should because it just hurts so many people financially. So I think, all of these delays are a lot more complicated than you would think. And I think we might have spoken about it last time. I do have a video on my channel about it, about how many studios have assets that are made in China, and a lot of the I guess asset studios were closed during the period of time where China was on heavy quarantine. But that's a global thing. There are countries all over the world that make. Sometimes it's art, sometimes it's character models. It's everything really.
I can actually piggyback on that because I'm in the unusual position of being able to talk kind of openly about Giant Squid's game, The Pathless, because they've decided to be pretty transparent with their development.
Is that the hoodie you're wearing right now? By any chance? Yeah.
It's my studio. My studio hoodie. It's just like it's like my work uniform. We have a strict dress code here. So I'm actually wearing a 3-piece suit below.
It all says The Pathless on it, though.
Yes, exactly. So I was in London at Abbey Road recording for the score right before all this hit.
As you do.
And it was
but
that's the thing. Like that it's a room full of musicians. And it's like, I kept thinking, holy shit, what if we had, the ironic thing is that I was tempted to push back the recording because I was told I have a little bit more time on the development schedule than I originally thought I had, but I was already kind of past this point of no return on the sort of train that it takes to get a session like that together. And so I decided to just keep it. And, if the game changes out from under my feet, I can make little edits and nips and tucks to the music to match it, but I'll have the bones of what I need. And so I decided to keep it. And if I had not done that, then I don't know how I would be finishing this score now, because it's like for the foreseeable future, I can't get an orchestra together. Like sessions are literally impossible. And I've seen networks of musician friends of mine online who all are saying, I play violin. If anybody needs just like a violin who can record at home, but it's really fundamentally not the same thing. And yes, that's also very useful. And I love that there's a lot of people sharing contact info to try to help keep freelance musicians employed who have seen just an overnight instant death of all their work. As musicians do session, like here in LA, musicians do a lot of session work, and there's like all these recording sessions that were canceled or postponed, but then they also have live gigs, concerts. The LA Phil has completely shut down. Hollywood Bowl is going to be a big question mark because their season is still a few months away, but it's like, are we going to be in the clear by then or not? Because that's an 18,000 seat venue. That's like the easiest thing to justify shutting down, but that's also a huge income stream for a lot of people. And so it's like the music side of this, I don't know. I'm so freaking lucky that this is falling in this narrow crack between when I am needing to gather around groups just organically. Cause I've had friends say, well, the orchestra, I was going to be recording in, Prague, and the orchestra canceled, and I have no backup plan. And like the game is supposed to be shipping soon, and I have no clue what to do. Yeah, it is crazy.
I guess that's an interesting point. Is you just don't realize how much it does influence absolutely everyone in different ways. Like a lot of the media outlets are trying to record their shows remotely, many of their like weekly podcasts or whatever. But a lot of people who work for media outlets don't have home setups. They largely aren't streamers or content creators or whatever. They don't know how that stuff works. So I know a lot of their shows are just not being made because people don't have the setups at home to do that. Whereas at Funhouse, we're really lucky about that we all know how to do that anyway.
And James had a really good thing. Like he put that out as far as here's how we're staying healthy at Funhouse. He put that video up yesterday, I believe it was. But everybody has the studio that they need right here in the pocket of their hand, whether you're Google, Android, or iPhone. And TikTok.
How polite of you to pay lip service to my phone.
You're the one person, so you're on this podcast. I might as well call it your product. But I mean, everybody has the ability that you don't have to have the best camera or lights and microphone. I mean, Mike Bithel's on his AirPods in his laptop. And
I sound
beautiful.
You sound beautiful.
I will criticize
what you're saying, though. I think the fundamental thing, though, is I think there's a generation for whom everything you're saying, Troy, makes perfect sense.
Yes.
And like the Funhouse guys,
it fits Funhouse. It fits Rooster Teeth. Traditional media hate it. They hate things not being shot in a studio.
Yeah. And there is big stuff that is meant to be happening that is not happening because of this, and no one will ever know because of the production scale of these things that people just, the people don't know how to do this.
Reality TV was born out of the strike because for
is that true?
Worse,
that coincided
with because they were like, we can't do scripted shows.
No way.
Fine, fuck it. This little show over here on MTV did really good. What if we did 10 other ones like that? Game shows started popping up, and all of a sudden it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and all of these shows started popping up because we had to go from scripted content to unscripted content. So it's one of the best. The artists are the ones who still subscribe to Adapt or Die. Bon Iver, his first record, he did in a cabin by himself with a shitty 4-track recorder, and like same thing. Nick Drake, man, Pink Moon was done on a 4-track recorder in his apartment. It's like I'm telling myself this too because I get equally frustrated when I can't get whatever software to load that is going to be the best and biggest and best thing that's going to help me make music or be able to stream or do whatever. It's like at the end of the day, especially right now, what people need is they need to connect, and they need to see people that they know, people that they like, people that they trust in front of a camera, in front of a lens, whatever that lens may be, talking to them and offering them hope and doing what they do. People need to see you, Alanah, with a controller in your hands and with headphones on and telling us what you think about this game, telling us that you think it's shitty and telling us what you think they could have done better. They need to know that Mike Bithell is at Bithell Games, wherever that may be, making games. They need to know that Austin is sitting behind a keyboard and making music, or behind his computer and making music. They need to see us doing that because that makes us believe that it's all okay. And that we're going to be okay. And that it just kind of sucks right now. And it's a little bit weird, but that we're going to be okay. Because if we don't have hope, we don't have anything.
I think another step to that, Troy, is something I've seen you be tweeting about, which is part of me hopes that this all happening encourages people to be more creative. I feel like there are people who maybe never would have considered opening up Ableton and trying to make a song, who this week might be like, maybe I'll do that. Or someone tries to write fiction for the first time ever, or someone streams for the first time ever, because if people are stuck at home and they have a little more time to do that, we could get some creatives out of this who previously didn't have the incentive to try to do that. And it's also, so we can have people who have more time or are encouraged to make cool stuff, but also have more people find them because everyone is looking for more stuff to entertain them with while they're stuck at home. And I don't know, there's been something very sweet about the even increase, I don't know if you guys have seen it, of people who've been doing, what do they call them, just chatting streams, just with their friends, where they're just intentionally not talking about anything negative. It's like a drive that's sort of been on Twitch where people are like, we're not talking about what's happening, we're just talking about the TV show we watched, and we're trying to do that. And it's just been kind of sweet to see people get together and do that stuff.
Yeah, or the Italians that are quarantined, singing outside their windows, and even Trevor Noah taking the piss and making a joke about it. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Yeah, I did. That was hilarious. The best was in Italy. It was in Barcelona, the variation on that, where a guy put his piano on his balcony and like a digital keyboard and cranked the speakers and started playing My Heart Will Go On. And like a block over, some dude leaned out of his window with a saxophone and started playing with him. And I get the impression these guys have never met before, right? And there's like all these people up and down the street just standing on their balcony, like in these little islands. There
was a guy DJing in Italy, and just everyone on the street is just singing along to whatever song he's playing. It's like, I love that so much.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming to see that stuff, even considering the situation. It's very cool.
That is us in the shit. That is us in a situation of, I think it's great when we stress test humanity because we quickly identify the best and the worst of us. And I think that that's a beautiful thing to realize. What art has come out of the worst times. The best music are still just brokenhearted love songs, man. And I think that once we understand that these things are here, that's an opportunity for us to learn. It's an opportunity for us to just be kind. That's the thing that I've loved seeing. I go to my Gelsons and I've seen more kindness than I've seen in a long time because right now it's preternatural and people are choosing to be kind and choosing to let people go in front of them. Our Gelson's is great. I know everyone that works there. Managers are awesome. That's one of the things that we do in our daily routine. So our daily routines got interrupted because every day we go at like 6 o'clock and we walk into the produce section, and Cornelio is the guy in produce, and he sees Traveler, and they both light up. Cornelio comes over to him. Traveler's like, Cornelio. And he goes, let's go pick out a pear. And they pick out a pear together. And Cornelio cuts him a pear so that Traveler has a pear to eat while we go shopping. So our routine has gotten interrupted. But what I love is that Gelson's said across the board, Gelson's is a local grocery store here in Southern California, mainly in Los Angeles. But they said the only people that can shop from the hours of 7 a.m., which is when they open, to 8 a.m., are people who are 65 or older, because they were seeing a lot of people that just couldn't get in. It's in Australia too. Yeah, it's freaking awesome.
That's a great thing.
That stuff is, I'm like, we're gonna be okay. Humanity's gonna be okay.
I think you realize how much we actually need each other when stuff like this happens too. Mm-hmm. You're just like, I really miss everyone. Like, it's definitely shows you the value of just human company, I think, for sure. But I did want to ask Troy to get off that very beautiful note, just for the information purposes. How has it affected you as an actor?
What's funny is I still have jobs. Like studios send out email to pretty much every agent. So just let you know. Like I went and did a job for Disney, and they were like, we sanitize the pop filter, we sanitize the mic as well as we can without having to actually do servicing of it. We spray Lysol in the room. Every surface is wiped down with disinfectant stuff. We encourage you to bring your own headphones, which a lot of people typically do. I'm fortunate that I've got pretty much the same headphones that studios have. I've got a couple of pairs, and so I started carrying my own headphones. I walked into Disney and nobody was there except for the greeter. She's like, "Hi, I'm here because I can't do my job from home." And I walked in, and there was our engineer and our lovely director, and I did my stuff and I left. Tried to have some fun, but I've got jobs that are lined up for next week. Like Mike said, there's still some stuff there's some jobs that have happened in just the right sweet spot where they're not impacted. They're affected, but they're not impacted. And everyone's just trying to. I love that Frozen 2 got dropped early because everyone's going to be home. It's stuff like that I want the industry to be able to respond and go, hey, if nothing else, this gives you an opportunity to catch up on that show or play that game. Consume media. It's okay. Do it together. Don't isolate.
I can't wait for Animal Crossing for that reason. Like, I'm much more of a Doom person than an Animal Crossing person, but the community that you get from Animal Crossing is a thing that on Friday I think is going to make a lot of people happy. Jumping into each other's towns and stuff. It's going to be great. Can't wait. Frozen 2 was 90 days early or something? It was significantly early, wasn't it? There was some other movie that was that early.
They went the other way. Everybody else, like Bond and everybody else, pushed, and then Frozen 2 was like, bah, but it's the moratorium on it, right?
Well, so Universal made the big headlines because they put
they're doing the same, right?
But they have they put movies that are in theaters now, like their new Invisible Man thriller. They literally said we're moving this to video on demand. Like I think iTunes starting on Friday or so. And this is a movie that was currently in theaters. And
I just saw it in theaters 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like boldly,
what's the legal stuff on that?
Precedent breaking.
Because in the UK,
question.
Legally, there are restraints. Would have to agree. So, like in the UK, contractually, theaters, there's a reason that they don't do this normally, which is that the movie studio basically gives the cinema like X amount of time to have it, and then a buffer, and then home entertainment, and then a buffer, and then, TV rights or whatever. And so then presumably
it's a continuous negotiation.
I mean, Disney are a big enough player. Obviously, they can do whatever they want. But like, it's just I'm. Like, there's bigger fish to fry right now, but I'm looking forward to reading like the article about the legal finagling and negotiation that took place to get the Invisible
the theaters are screwed.
iTunes.
It sucks for them. So hopefully there's some kind of compensation, especially for like smaller owned theaters that aren't chains. It's a big bummer. I know the Alamo closed in LA, and I love going there. We actually just bought a friend for his birthday. We got him a season pass, and he texted me yesterday and was like, "Thanks for that. Can't use it." And you're like, "Good point." Yeah, it sucks.
And a lot of folks who work in those kind of places, right? That's the scary part, is how many people, hopefully they're all going to be looked after.
Yeah. Well, we have
This is a
Sorry,
total.
Troy worked really hard to bring up the news.
Yeah, man, I brought it to the top of the mountain.
I was going to end this by saying,
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh.
we don't make money from this show intentionally. But I was going to ask that everyone who watches this, there are programs that you can donate to. That is the thing I would ask you to do in order to help. And I know a very helpful service in LA is Meals on Wheels. Basically, people who are intentionally going out of their way to deliver food to the elderly, the homeless, and also the disabled. So definitely look into those. Even $5 a day, you can get someone food that they currently can't get at a grocery store. So consider doing that as your gift to us in exchange for us trying to give you this every week. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about PlayStation next week, but I also was going to have everyone here talk about some of their favorite games or games that have gotten them through tough times. I have a really good story for that one. So we'll try and compile a little list for you all. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts?
Stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected.
Wash your hands and make cool stuff and share it. If you've never written anything before, I want to read it.
That was it. Exactly. Yeah. I want to hear new music born of isolation.
Yeah,
man.
It'd be awesome. Alrighty.
It's time for emo to come back.
It never left, Mike. It never left. Have you seen this side part I have? No, it's still in my heart.
It's good. No, it's working. It's working.
Not let that go anywhere. All right. In lieu of any technical troubles or any major things that delay the production, we will see you all next Friday.